Dr. Vidya Yaravdekar, Pro-Chancellor, Dr. Rajiv Yaravdekar, Provost, Dr. Ramakrishnan Raman, Vice-Chancellor, Dr. Shejul, Registrar, Ms. Shraddha Chitali, Controller of Examinations, faculty, most important, graduating students, and your near and dear. It is a great pleasure to join the 22nd convocation of the Symbiosis University. Let me extend my congratulations to all those who would be conferred their degrees today. I also felicitate the entire Symbiosis family on this occasion, knowing that each new cohort makes you even prouder of your contribution to both nation building and international relations. On such an occasion, it is natural to reflect on the time when I was myself in your situation. Clearly, the world was a very different place, perhaps less complex, but also with less options and less opportunities than there are now. It was not only that the world has undergone a radical transformation, so too has our own society and nation. What all of you are seeing, learning, and experiencing would have been beyond our imagination then. Those who are graduating today definitely have a different skill sets, much wider knowledge base, and far greater confidence. And that is great because after all, you are the generation that has the responsibility for taking us to Viksit Bharat. Let me take you back to what the world was like around the time of my graduation. It was a few years after the creation of Bangladesh. We had the West and China ranged against us alongside Pakistan. This will probably come as a surprise to a generation which has grown up thinking of the West largely in friendly terms. In response, we forged a strong strategic bond with the Soviet Union. Gulf nations at that time were then the backwaters, not the powerhouse that they are today. Southeast Asia was barely developing, just emerging, and certainly not conceived of as the holiday destinations which some of you may have today used. Radical policies, radical politics was much more a global fashion at that time, especially for developing countries. Our relations with the non-aligned world, what we call the global south today, were cordial but not necessarily substantive. In our immediate neighborhood, the civilizational connect was obviously there, but that was not the case with the economic and infrastructural linkages that now exist. Our foreign trade was very limited, and so too was travel abroad. Of course, through all this, we held our own and maintained a notable international profile. Now, the state of our society was also markedly different. Remember, I'm talking to all of you about the pre-reform era. Economic growth was low, shortages were rampant, licensing controls were pervasive, and social indices not great. In fact, how to communicate a rationing system to those who are used to choices and plenty is itself a great challenge. There were limitations, not only of income, but even of availability. When we, at that time, bought two-wheelers, leave alone cars, refrigerators, television sets, believe me, it was a once-in-a-life purchase. Telephones and passports were a great privilege. Much of what we take as a given today, I want to stress, was simply beyond our reach then. But here is the lesson. If we have progressed so much by discarding that socialist model, by going forward with our own authentic beliefs and entrepreneurship, ask yourself, when the foundation is so much more solid, and as we get empowered by technology, how much further can your generation take the nation? In this environment, our understanding of the world, I must also tell you, was limited. And by the way, it was through very different mediums. Books, radio, later on television, and newspapers were the main source of information. The arrival of the internet was one revolution, that of the smartphone more recently, an even greater one. It was not just a question of knowing more or less about the world. In that era, the world was simply a more distant place, one much harder to relate with. Depending on what one did, it was an object of curiosity and in some cases perhaps of compulsion. But it was rarely perceived as an opportunity. Now, let's fast forward a few decades and come to the present. Where the world is concerned, asserting today a definitive picture is obviously a real problem because so much of it is in transition. But the global order established 80 years ago is clearly unraveling. There are multiple and complex reasons for that. Naturally, we attribute it to the politics and policies of individual nations, especially large ones. However, they themselves are actually reacting to trends that may even be of their own making. At the heart of the matter are three concepts. One, globalization. Two, rebalancing. And three, multipolarity. And each have been accelerated by the march of technology. Now, you might think that I'm beginning a lecture on political science. But I want you all to appreciate that whatever you may have studied, whatever job you may have now entered, these facets that I'm talking about will actually impact your lives in the coming years. Perhaps globalization is the most appropriate one to begin because it has actually fundamentally altered the manner in which we work, we think, and we even exist. Some might tell you that in one form or the other, it has always been there. This may be true, but not with the intensity and the impact that we experience now. Whether it is the transportation of goods, the mobility of people, the breaching of boundaries, or the impact of ideas, we are witnessing something truly unprecedented. Each of these dimensions influences our life. Your generation, I'm confident, will travel much more. It will explore different work opportunities. It will connect with other societies, beliefs and views, and it will access products which are made far away. Now, this can be both a benefit and a concern. If we get our act together, if we get it together purposefully, the needle will move in the positive direction. If we don't, it goes the opposite way. So let me illustrate this with some examples. By doubling down on Make in India, more of our products can make their mark beyond our shores. This is over and above meeting our own needs. Add to that design in India, research in India, innovate in India, or deliver from India. And the same holds true for services as well. Conversely, we will remain a mere market for others if we are less than successful in our efforts. Obviously, all this is easier said than done, and we have to upgrade our infrastructure, we have to develop our human resources, we must adopt and pursue right policies. But more importantly, it requires vision, it requires leadership, and it requires execution, all of which we fortunately have today. Now, just the record of the last few years should infuse confidence in all of us. After all, I would like you to reflect on this. We have deployed our own 5G stack. Remember, we couldn't do that for 3G, 4G. We have the world's largest digital public infrastructure. We have landed on the difficult side of the moon. We have erected the world's highest rail bridge. We have introduced the Vande Bharat Expresses. And we have spawned a vibrant startup culture. All that must today prepare us for the coming of artificial intelligence. And believe me, this will bring the world even closer to our daily existence. Now, what separates the globalization era from its predecessors is that when it comes to resources, supply chains, markets, or partners, we are actually operating well beyond our own borders. For us personally, that means developing a much greater awareness of the world, its possibilities, and of course, its risks. It is not only a global marketplace that we contemplate, but increasingly a global workplace. In essence, globalization has changed horizons and has expanded your options. Understandably, different nations have taken advantages of these shifts which I'm describing to different degrees. Some, in fact, even believe that it has been to their detriment. Objectively, what has happened is that after decolonization, many nations were able to progress and prosper because they now control their own destinies. Now, this has not happened automatically. The quality of choices and the wisdom of policy has made a crucial difference. In India's own case, we have seen how leadership and governance has led to ups and downs in various phases in our economic growth and in our social transformation. The nation that has gained the most in this era is China. But we ourselves have done well, especially in the post-reform era. And I would say even more in the last decade. There would be some others in the emerging markets category about whom the same can be said. In contrast, much of the Western world now feels that they have stagnated, a sentiment that has increasingly come to acquire a political meaning. There are many reasons for that sentiment. Western elites consciously chose to shift production to maximize profits. Their competitiveness has eroded over the years, accelerated by their lifestyle. Their demographic predicament has been an added factor. But the cumulative result of all these happenings is that the global economic and thereafter political pecking order has actually undergone a very significant change. This rebalancing is not only a reflection of relative power, it is also one of the attitude that people have to each other and to the world. As one of the notable examples of rising in the international order power structure, the unfolding attitude and intent of India towards the world merits reflection. How does the world perceive us currently? The short answer is very much more positively and very much more seriously than before. And the reasons for that is both our national brand and our individual reputations, which have improved considerably. We are regarded today by the world as people with a strong work ethic, with an aptitude for technology, who espouse a family-centric culture. In conversations abroad, I largely hear words of praise for our diaspora. And increasingly, as ease of doing business and ease of living improve in India itself, for us as a people, for us as a nation, for us as a society. The old stereotypes about India are steadily being put behind. Of course, there is much more that we need to do in our journey of progress and modernization, but this evolution in our image is an undeniable reality. Let me also stress that this is neither anecdotal nor impressionistic. Hard figures vouch for this transformation. Among them, the growing number of global capability centers in India, the increasing demand for Indian talent and skills abroad, and the individual successes of people. And this extends equally to us as a collective. Perhaps more than others, India is today defined by its talent and by its skill. All that has helped to shape our national brand. So let us ponder then on the opposite, on the converse. How do we Indians approach the world? Again, I would say clearly, with more confidence and with more capability. But there is a difference that is worth noting. Most nations have made their presence felt in the world through economic interactions, be it trade, investment, or services. Naturally, that has been our pathway as well, and each of these metrics has been increasing. But what distinguishes us, however, is the relevance of human resources. This often takes the form of a debate focusing on manufacturing versus services. In reality, the two are actually closely interlinked. A large economy like ours must develop substantial and contemporary manufacturing if it is to keep abreast of technology, and if it is to imbibe and generate an industrial work culture. Only then can we hone our capabilities even in the services sector. Moreover, as incomes rise and demands grow, a range of socio-economic requirements need to be addressed more effectively. We will need not just more engineers, doctors, and managers, or scientists, techies, and lawyers, but equally teachers, researchers, historians, artists, and sportspersons. Bear in mind that in the last decade alone, I want you to reflect on this. In the last decade alone, our higher education institutions have broadly doubled in number over what they had been before. And there is room for more growth and greater improvement. My point is that we have started to surge in trained human resources at the very time when many developed nations are struggling to find them. Since demand and supply invariably develop their own equation, we have entered an era of mobility. A global workforce is in the making. In my own travels abroad, I increasingly encounter more Indian aircrew, more Indian hotel staff and managers, more Indian medical personnel, professionals, and entrepreneurs. This has two important implications for us as a government. One, we need to ensure the welfare, including in conflict situations. And two, that the politics of this mobility needs to be managed. These can be challenging at times, but nevertheless need constant attention. Our record in taking care of citizens, whether during COVID or in conflict situations, is second to none. To be honest, I believe it is the strongest in the world. As to the flow of talent, it is gathering momentum even while stirring sensitivities in some quarters. But economics and technology are hard to stop. And when talent does not move to the task will surely do to the talent. Either way, the workforce in the coming years will be far, far more international than it is today. When we discuss changes in the world, it is also common to normally talk about economy, technology, military capabilities, or politics. But rebalancing has some other dimensions which should not be ignored. This includes the definition of what are norms, the relevance of culture, and the power of narratives. Although decolonization is approaching its ninth decade, it is still very much a Western-dominated world order. There can be a healthy debate how best to make it more representative of all cultures, but change we surely must. This has different facets, from tabling alternative ideas, advancing new initiatives, popularizing our customs and traditions, or setting up different platforms and mechanisms. Let me share a few illustrations in that context. Think about the International Day of Yoga, or for that matter, the International Year of Millets. Reflect on the Ek Ped Maa Ke Naam campaign, or how Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam has come to drive our G20 presidency, and which led to the inclusion of the African Union in its membership. Then there is the International Solar Alliance, the LIFE Initiative, the fact that we have set up a WHO Center for Traditional Medicine. When Deepavali is recognized by UNESCO as intangible heritage, or Lucknow and Hyderabad are declared UNESCO gastronomy cities, believe me, these are statements in themselves. In the diplomatic world, this thinking has led to the creation of BRICS and more recently of the Voice of Global South summits. In fact, when I was myself giving in to the temptation of writing, that urge to balance out the conventional Western concepts in strategic writings was very strong. It led me to highlight older traditions in statecrafts in the Ramayana and the Mahabharata that have not got the global attention that they merit. Bharat is one of the few old civilizations that continues today as a major nation state. We will shape a more balanced global narrative, but only by taking more pride in our customs, traditions, and heritage. This is what I discern in contemporary India, and let me tell you, it is a source of great reassurance. The global order has now reached a point where rebalancing is creating multipolarity. A number of centers of power and influence have emerged. No country, however powerful, can impose its will on all issues. Not just that, it also means now that there is a natural competition among nations in the world and that it creates its own balance. The very idea of power, that it has so many definitions of trade, of energy, of military, of resources, of technology, of talent, It makes this a particularly complex phenomenon. It is also essential to recognize that that global powers are no longer capable of being universal. We see that in the selectivity of issues and the prioritization of agenda. In fact, the trend in many quarters is towards being much more self-centered than before. So as we saw during the COVID pandemic, the generosity of India is not necessarily shared by others. There are some particular features of the world politics today that also bear appreciation. Policies are increasingly national, maybe even regional, and the global commons often suffers neglect. Globalization itself is in political retreat, even if its economic dimensions remain deeply entrenched. In many parts of the world, historical causes and historical concerns are being revived. The propensity to take risks is very much higher. All in all, we are much more complex, volatile, and uncertain international situation. I stress this not only to make you more aware of the challenges in the world, but also so that you fully appreciate the stability and the progress at home. Indian foreign policy in such a context understandably strives for optimal positioning. We seek to maximize the freedom of choice. We also strive to maintain the autonomy of decision making. This means working with major nations and regions on agreed agendas, but in combinations that suit our national interest. Like any other nations, our priorities start with the immediate neighborhood, where we proof against volatility by deepening cooperation, contacts, and communication. Expressed as neighborhood first, it is then buttressed by a further set of policies that focus on the Gulf, on Southeast Asia, on Central Asia, and the Indian Ocean. We have built on the historical solidarity with developing nations by promoting the grouping of the Global South. And I must say, I was particularly pleased to see the representation of students at this university. But as India ascends the international hierarchy, with all the accompanying growth of interest and influence, we too must start preparing for a global footprint. Whether it is the Indo-Pacific or Africa, the Mediterranean or the Caribbean, or indeed even the Arctic or Antarctica, we are starting something now that your generation will have to take forward. Much of what I've said is something that I'm sure graduating students have sensed intuitively, whether it is about the world or about our own society. Change may be the only constant, but it is one happening more frequently and impactfully. As all of you connect dots around you, from infrastructure to education, to the quality of life, as you reflect on your closer connect to the world and its developments, I'm confident that you will approach your future with great optimism. You will achieve what we could only dream of, and much more. On this momentous occasion, as you step into real life, let me express my good wishes to each and every one of you. You will not only do India proud, but also contribute to a better world. I thank you.